Recording in progress.
So good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Reverend Barbara Williams, and welcome to our workshop for Unity of Chautauqua. And just want to invite you, if you want a daily word or want to take one for any of your friends, that would be great. And also that we are recording this. And also we recorded the Sunday service. So if you did not have an opportunity to see that, you can go to our website. It's Unity CHQ, that's Chautauqua's, like if you were going to Chautauqua, it'd be chq.org. So we're unitychq.org. And then you can find all of our recordings. Just click on YouTube and you'll get to see them. So this evening, I would like to welcome Reverend Russell Heiland.
We do.
And Russell and I
Step
have
into the screenshot.
Yes, yeah. And Russell and I have a common home church.
Someone's on it.
That's okay, it's still recording.
Okay.
Yeah, we have someone coming.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah, what that means is we've got somebody joining us on Zoom. So it's still recording though. We've got a Zoom friend on. Yay, so wave to us. And so Russell came originally, that I know him, is that he came up to my church when he was at First Unity in St. Pete. And I had the church in Port Richey, Florida. And he'd come in on the weekends and teach classes, and people raved about him. So when I found out he could come here, we finally got it after 3 times.
After 3 times. Scheduled once while I was in Florida and had to cancel. Got the next one down pat, summer 2020. Spin it in the living room.
And then 2021, I asked you again, and you couldn't come. So we've got you this time. So it's so good. And so tonight he is going to talk about sweet dreams.
Sweet dreams,
So
all
it's
right.
yours.
And I just realized I have one more resource in my bag.
Okay.
I think, yeah, there it is. All right. So, hi everybody. As Barbara said, I'm Reverend Russell. I currently live in Fairfax, Virginia, DC suburb. People are curious, like, what does that mean? And I said, well, if it's not rush hour, it means 20 minutes from our house to the Lincoln Memorial. If it's rush hour, I don't know. We might not even go. So are all of you here familiar with Unity, or anybody new to Unity? So it'll help me place you. Do you have familiar?
No.
All right. So do you have a faith background in particular you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, Catholic.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So what is the impetus for this workshop is that when I was working on my ministerial studies, I was also engaged in graduate studies at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. We were living in Wilmington at the time. UNCW has 2 other nicknames, the first of which is UNC by the sea, appropriately enough, because there's an ocean, or the other one, the college by the Kmart, because there's a Kmart right there at the edge of campus. So when I was in grad school, I was engaged in a program of study called Graduate Liberal Studies, also known as School for Schoolies. And when I was talking about talking with the program director, he said, Russell, this program is not vocational for anybody except for maybe you, because all the work you're doing in ministry and all of your studies, since it's pretty much an independently directed program, you could direct towards your work in ministry. So that's what I did. So every class I took, I endeavored to take one that would somehow or another tie in with my ministerial studies, because I really think it is important for us as clergy, or for me as a clergy person, I'll just own it for myself, to be as learned and as well-versed as I could possibly be about anything I could possibly learn that I could use in ministry. So I did papers on clinical trials of prayer as a healing modality. I did papers on a whole bunch of other things, but where I landed was Dreamwork. Primarily because one of the most pivotal instructors I've ever had is a Jungian analyst, PhD, Dr. Jenny Yates. And Dr. Yates was the most brilliant, and still is, the most brilliant human being I have ever met. She inspired me to want to learn and to go deeply into the analytical psychology of Carl Jung. There's a little bit of background about me. I did graduate, by the way. I did write a master's thesis entitled Inner Vision and Synchronicity, Dreamwork as taught by Charles Fillmore and Carl Jung. Charles Fillmore is one of the co-founders of the Unity movement. So I brought a variety of different resources. I will make reference to them. I don't have an exact plan of attack for our hour together tonight because I wanted to hear and find out from the group, what is your connection to Dreamwork? Dreamwork will highlight things that you may not have ever understood about yourself. It may tell you things about the world you didn't realize that something inside of you already knew. It can help you to understand and interpret what's happening in your body and what's happening in the world. Well, in talking just a few moments ago, I was reminded of a Chautauqua-related dream I had when I was in high school. So my friend Nisha and I were in school together, Nisha Gupta, and we were on a school field trip. It was field trip day, and we got to school, and we're about to board the bus, and I said, you know what's kind of weird, Nisha? I had a dream that something happened on the bus, and we were stranded by the side of the road. Now, we lived in Muncie, Indiana. We were going to Indianapolis for something, probably to get out of Muncie. We had a pass. And she goes, oh my God, Rusty, that's what they called me at the time. And she still does. I had the same dream. Halfway to Indianapolis, the bus breaks down. So you might think, what does that have to do with Chautauqua? So last week I was talking to Nisha. I was telling her, oh yeah, I'm going to Chautauqua. I hadn't talked to her in a while, I'm going to Chautauqua. And she goes, I have a really good friend who is the director of diversity and equity at Chautauqua, Amit. I'll put you in touch with him. So we have connected with Amit. So here, small world story, decades in far remove, but because of a dream, I'm here teaching about Dreamwork and had a connection with Vice President of Chautauqua. So that's how it works sometimes. So what is your familiarity? Let's just have a few of you share about Dreamwork. Why are you even interested in a topic like this? Anybody? All right. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I had one that, so in 1980, I'm 4 out of 5 in our family. In 1980, my oldest brother, I had a dream on a Wednesday that he passed away. And we were walking through a cemetery, and he's telling me that death isn't a bad thing. I can see, I still can see all the tombstones of everybody in my family. So I walked down the hall, and I kind of peeked into my mother's room, just like, yeah. And I was 12. So I said this weird dream, and I explained it to her. She goes, well, back then, you're fine, go to bed. And so 2 nights later, 2 in the morning, knocking on our door. My brother's father-in-law, told my father that my brother had died. Actually playing hockey, college hockey. Bizarre. And I remember I walked down the hall, and my mother looked at me. How bizarre that was that you had that dream, basically. That it was, your brother was telling you all about it, but then he passed away. So.
Wow. Yeah.
Kind of weird.
It happens. It highlights connections, and that there's more to this life than we realize, more than our 5 senses. There are multiple ways of knowing, multiple forms of connection that are very powerful, and it is wise, I think, for us to learn to honor and appreciate those, and to learn how to have a context for them, and the context will become very important as we get into the bulk of what I want to share tonight. Who else? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a lot of dreams, and I've always been curious about the dreams that feel like you're back here and you're watching yourself in it, and the dreams that feel like you're there and you're not observing it, you're experiencing it, and then some dreams that feel totally symbolic, and some dreams you can't get the symbolism out of them, and is it more of a literal thing? So anyway, it's just a curiosity on my part about
So when we,
facets.
absolutely. So there are different phases of mind. Jung posited that there were 3 phases of mind: the superconscious, the divine consciousness that we connect to through prayer and meditation. There is our conscious minds, those things we know that we know that we feel, that we're aware of. And then there's this subconscious realm of mind, which is the storehouse of all of our memories, thoughts, feelings. So when we are asleep and when we are dreaming, there is no real barrier between all of those things. Like right now, we're theoretically conscious and kind of know what's going on. So our subconscious is kind of down here, just kind of doing what it does. Superconscious is up here. So that we can just be present and function right now. So, but when we are asleep, we're much more permeable. So then it becomes the work of an analyst or somebody who has studied their dreams or tracked their dreams to begin to understand which part of myself, because ultimately each phase of consciousness is a part of yourself. So which part of myself am I connecting with at this time? So a dream where you might be watching yourself might be a way of your subconscious mind or superconscious saying, hey honey, look at yourself. And might raise the question, what am I learning about myself? How do I see myself? How do other people see me? What can I learn about this? As opposed to when we are very actively in a dream. So let me caution, the dreamer always has final say on what a dream means. So when we're active in a dream, then we may be having the opportunity to see, to get some insight into our own behavior, or also what we call day residue. Sometimes it's almost like you have to use up a certain amount of energy throughout the course of a day. It just has to be expended, or just maybe it's just a part of your conscious mind. I thought about this or that during the day. I'm just thinking about it. Like I've had dreams about Chautauqua while I've been at Chautauqua, which for me, it's easy to identify. That's day residue. That's the term we use for that. We'll get more into all of this sort of stuff in a moment. What else?
I just think you get a lot of messages, be it from higher self or whoever, that it helps you work out life. Dreams are very
Right, so they are, and sometimes we'll have a powerful dream that stays with us for a very long time, and it will become a recurring motif. In his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, Jung talks about some lifetime dreams that have stayed with him his entire life. And you may have had some of those yourself that speak to a significant issue in your life as a part of your unfoldment, or as he would say, individuation.
I used to have one, and thank God I don't have it anymore. It was 30 years ago, but it would be like I was in the bottom of a sewage pit, way down, maybe a deep well, but it was like a sewage pit, and I was stuck in there and I couldn't get out. And it was horrible. I would wake up and thank God it's gone away, but it occurred for probably 30 years. I don't know what it meant.
So one thing about sharing dreams, just as an aside, when you are sharing your dream content, just be aware you run the risk of giving away far more about yourself than you realize. Mm-hmm. And so if you are sharing your dream with somebody, it's very important to have that be in a safe container, whether in a Dreamwork group or with a therapist, a trusted loved one who can hold with you whatever you might be revealing. So we all have dreams, and I'm going to come back to your first one that you shared about how we sometimes get messages in our dreams and sometimes provide immediate comfort. If you're a Unity person, today's daily word was comfort, and I want to share with you a very tragic and comforting dream I had. It was December 3rd, 2008. I had a dream. It was about 6 in the morning, and I dreamed that I saw my sister, who was blonde, standing next to my late secretary. My secretary's name was Debbie, and by the time Debbie came to work for us at the church, she had battled cancer multiple times. She had had a double radical, and yet in my dream, she was vibrantly healthy and full-figured. And I saw this blonde figure growing right beside her. And then my phone rang. And I don't know how I knew it, but I knew a couple things. I knew, two things. I knew that my sister, who was blonde, had died. And I knew that everything was fine because she was with Debbie. And I picked up the phone, and it was my mother crying hysterically. My sister had died, totally unexpectedly. And so I was very comforted in that moment. and was able to be of service to my family and to through the service and all that, and to feel a real sense of something very profound and numinous because of this dream. So let me ask you another question. Why would I, as a minister, be talking about dreams? Or what is the let me rephrase the question. Why would it be important, or could it be important for the clergy to understand dream interpretation?
It's been in the Bible many times. People have learned things in Bible context. One reason you might want to know that. I mean, you might want.
Yeah, it's kind of like occupational.
Yes.
Yeah, something.
But to help people who might otherwise throw away a dream, well, it was just a dream versus a bit of more to it.
Yeah.
Like deeper understanding.
Deeper self-understanding. There is a term that we often use called the care of the soul. And part of the role of the clergy historically has always been to serve as confessor or counselor. And so often people will have a dream or a recurring dream and it weighs heavily on their mind, and they just have to talk to somebody about it because they know it's important. Something is going on and they need to get it off their chest. And so it would be helpful to have somebody who is trusted to share that with. And historically, a trusted person would be a member of the clergy who might be skilled in being with people and skilled in things of this world and things of a spiritual nature. There are many instances of dreams in the Bible. And visions, dreams when somebody's sleeping, visions when somebody awake. Specifically, there are 21 different dreams noted in the Bible. 10 are in the book of Genesis, 1 in Judges, 1 in 1 Kings, 3 in Daniel, and 6 in Matthew. So Christmas is coming. You may not believe it with the heat, but Christmas really will be here. There are 5 different instances of dreams in the book of Matthew where Joseph is warned in a dream going to Egypt and warned to come back to the Holy Land. So we see these dreams appearing. Within the context of the unity movement, though, we have a way of doing church that in many respects is different from other faith communities. Not to make anybody else wrong or bad, that's hubris. We're not above anybody else, but we have a different perspective. And I want to share with you what appeared in the frontispiece of Unity magazine from 1921 to 1928. A little bit of background about Unity magazine. It is one of the touchstones of the Unity movement. The other one is Daily Word that Barbara referenced in the back, a daily devotional with a thought for the day. Daily Word's been published since July 1924, represent. But the Unity movement itself, of our 600 churches and centers worldwide, counts as its foundation the publication of a magazine called Modern Thought, which changed names over the time to become Unity. And in the front of Unity magazine from 1921 to 1928, we read these words: Unity is a handbook of Christian healing and Christian psychology. The purpose of Unity is not to found a new sect, but to give people a practical application of what they already have through their church affiliations. Initially, the founders of Unity were not looking to start a new church. They just wanted to be teachers and help people understand practical tools to use what they already had in their faith communities. Unity stands, therefore, as an independent exponent of practical Christianity, teaching the practical application of the doctrine of Jesus Christ in all affairs of life. Explaining the action of mind and how it is the connecting link between God and man. How mind affects the body, producing harmony or discord, sickness or health, and how it brings man into an understanding of divine law, harmony, health, and peace here and now. What has always gotten me about the Unity movement were a couple things. Practical. We want to use, we say in Unity, we teach tools, not rules. put into practice anything we're teaching. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, lay it aside. But really what got me was the idea of Christian psychology. Because in the writings of Charles Fillmore, co-founder of the Unity Movement, and Myrtle Fillmore, the other co-founder, there are all kinds of references to psychology and to the mind. Mind as the connecting link between God and man, and woman, this is the times in which they were writing. So when we understand our minds, when we understand how we think, what we think, why we think it, then we can access that divine power that we all have, the connecting link of God, to change our minds, to change our thoughts, to change our feelings, and create a life that is healthy, prosperous, joy-filled, and peaceful. But we have to understand how the mind works. And as he said in this frontispiece, Christian psychology. Now, there aren't a lot of faith communities going around saying, hey, we're here to teach psychology. And I'm sometimes asked by other clergy members or other people, as clergy members or individuals in the mental health community, can you explain Unity to me in a nutshell? It's like trying to explain Chautauqua in a nutshell. So what is it really? And I often will tell them, it's kind of like cognitive behavioral therapy set to music with a prayer. If you understand that particular method, because what they do in CBT is really help out people understand, what are you thinking? Where do your thoughts come from? What are you feeling? Where do your feelings come from? You can change them because you have a mind. Central also to Unity teaching is this, what we call the Christ within, as we read in Colossians, Christ in you, the hope of glory. So there is a power within each one of us to create lives of meaning and purpose. And that same power is the power we access to understand our thinking and our feeling without guilt, without shame, without fear. Because all of us are human beings doing the best we can. Or as we might say, we are spiritual beings having a human experience doing the best we can to have lives of meaning and purpose. Thoughts, comments, and questions about anything I've said so far? I need a drink. Let me rephrase that. I wanted some water. So Charles Fillmore and the Unity movement began as publishing. And there were a lot of different publications that they published throughout the years before they actually formally incorporated as a school, actually. And they began printing in Unity magazine and in another publication called Weekly Unity, Dream Interpretation, in 1909. This was way early. And in a doctoral thesis by James Teener published in 1939, he talks about when the dream interpretations became a regular feature of Unity. And he says in 1914, dream interpretation was established as a department in Unity and was carried until 1917. Then in 1921, under the title Inner Vision, it was resurrected and made a regular part of their work. So I was just fascinated as a graduate student studying Jung. It's like, wow, they have this dream interpretation department. But when I first went to the Unity archives at our seminary in Kansas City, it's in an incorporated town called Unity Village, I found out that I discovered this for myself. I discovered the dream interpretation department. I've got all kinds of handouts. I'll pass them around so you can look at those. And I went to the seminary faculty who were teaching at the time, and I said, hey, what can you tell me about the Inner Vision department? Nothing. None of them knew it ever existed because it had a very short lifespan. So I'll get back to that in just a moment. So in Weekly Unity, which was a newspaper they published for the Unity Truth students there in the Kansas City metro in 1915, Fillmore wrote this. This was a lecture that he actually delivered called Guiding Visions. We are all receiving visions, but we are not obedient unto them. Often our lack of obedience is caused by ignorance or failure to realize that the vision is leading, guiding intelligence. You have, every one of you, visions. You have had waking visions and sleeping visions. You have seen things that you could not tell to others for fear that they would ridicule you. Now those visions and those things that you have seen are from the Lord. And if you would acknowledge those occult, hidden things as being real, and in the silent recesses of your soul be obedient, you would get something more definite. And this would lead to a further revelation, and you would soon have the door open between you and your higher self. 1915. So he goes on to say, the most delicate subject the metaphysician has to deal with is that of visions and dreams. The practical everyday man considers them foolish, childless, valueless. The Orthodox religionist also, who bases his salvation on the scriptures, puts a like estimate on those seemingly meaningless pictures of the mind. And even those who have a certain faith in dreams and visions are in a large degree in the darkness as to their real import. The reason of all this is that the realm in which these forces operate is so far removed from material consciousness that it is difficult to get a right interpretation or right understanding of the symbols. He goes on to lay out that we dream in symbols, because quite often you don't hear a sound in dreams. It's just pictures, right? So, and sometimes you hear words, of course, we all do. But there are symbols, and it was really important to Carl Jung and his teaching to begin to understand the symbol systems from around the world. Because Jung had a concept that we talk about. Jung had a concept, I get so excited about this stuff, I have multiple thoughts at the same time. Concept of the collective unconscious. Any of you heard that term before? Who wants to define it? Somebody want to give it a shot?
It's what you said, collective.
Collective,
unconscious.
yeah.
It's something that we all share in the humans, the humanity, but we're not conscious of it. It's like underneath, it's something we all share.
It's something that so the answer is the collective consciousness is something we all share. It's like some foundational motifs, some way of knowing. If you look cross-culturally at different cultures, you'll discover the archetype that is the primordial figure, like the wise old man or the wise old woman or the evil stepmother or the trickster, these sort of things, or concern for children, concern for food. These are collective unconscious things that we all share. Now, in a dream, though, it is entirely possible, and we talked about this when I was in grad school, you might start dreaming of symbols from a different culture. Because when we are asleep, we are open to the world's wisdom as well. So one of the tools that we use in dream interpretation is draw out your dreams or write your dreams and begin to do your own research. I don't like the idea of dream dictionaries because those are somebody else's interpretations. Just go online and see, what does a horse symbolize, or what does a dolphin symbolize, or that sort of thing. Symbols. You might get religious symbols from another culture. You might get symbols from your own faith tradition and not realize that they are what we call overdetermined or have multiple layers of meaning. And as you're reading along, it's like, whoa, this feels something to me. When we are talking about dream work, we often invite people to do what we call the Tingle Test. So if you're reading or if you're sharing your dream with somebody and they say, well, it might mean this, it might mean that. If you feel a tingle, that's probably something for you to pay attention to. There might be something really meaningful there. I want to go on with this article a little bit more from Fillmore, another paragraph or two. The spirit functions in a consciousness in which there is no limitation. So this is how you might be able to access information from a different culture, or connections about a school bus, or have the same dream. Anthony and I have had times when we've had the same dream or subject, or might have what you call a communication with somebody or something. So there is no limitation in spirit, in which all phases of mind are open and available to you. It is not a place of things, but of ideas. In order to connect or synchronize with the world of effects, these ideas have to be transposed, changed about entirely, if you like. if you take your dreams, what seems to be literally, you may fail to understand the message. So you shared a dream. So what might be the symbol of being down in a well? What might be a symbol? What might be represented by being at the bottom of the well with all the muck and the mire? What might be a chronic exterior life condition that might precipitate having the same dream over and over and over? Things like that. So symbols. The spirit talks in ideas which are presented to man's consciousness as shapes and forms. So when you have the vision of the dream, remember that it is through understanding of its abstract or absolute character that you will get the lesson and the right interpretation. If you dream of people or things and think that they mean those same people or things themselves, you're not interpreting scientifically, Fillmore says. Men become prophets and seers by seeking to know the meaning of pictures of the mind. It's part of what he had to say about that. And over the years, Fillmore started writing and writing about dreams and presenting all kinds of information about dreams and how to interpret dreams. And I thought to myself, how did he know that? In my master's thesis, I compared the life and work of Charles Fillmore and Carl Jung. And if you would like to read this, if you sometime maybe you can't sleep and you want to dream, it's at truthunity.net. Truthunity.net is the website for all things Unity history. And just Google my last name. It's Heiland, or just Google dreams at truthunity.net. You'll find the full context. I wrote that in 2007. There's some parts I would change, lots of it I would expand, but the full content is there. So Charles Fillmore, let's give you a little bit of background. So he's writing all this stuff about dreams. He's a wonderful organizer. Charles Fillmore himself was not very well formally educated as opposed to someone like Carl Jung. Carl Jung was a PhD psychiatrist, all the best schools in Switzerland, most learned, cultured person in the world, fluent in multiple languages, just brilliant beyond words. Charles Fillmore was born and raised mostly on a Chippewa reservation. His father left when he and his brother were boys, raised by a single mother. He had a skating accident when he was 10, couldn't go to school, had tutors, all of whom were women, and yay, work it out, sister. And didn't go to college, didn't really have formal education past the time he was 10 years old. Everything else was informal, but a brilliant mind. And he had a dream in which the name for the Unity movement was actually given, because his wife had had a healing experience and she was wanting to do more prayer work and he was wanting to do prayer work. He didn't really understand where this was all leading. And he had a dream and he was given the name Unity for the Unity movement. And part of what he was doing in his very, very early phase of his spiritual maturity, after watching his wife be healed from tuberculosis from repeated prayer work, took 2 years, but it happened. He started studying a lot, heard a lot of different teachers who all talked about prayer and meditation and connecting with God and spirit. And he said very famously in 1892, published in Unity magazine, he said, "I can go straight to headquarters and find out for myself, or the whole thing is a fraud, all this talk of spiritual healing." And so he would spend a lot of time in meditation every night. I think it was 2 hours by just sitting there in silence. And well, they didn't have the internet then, so that's sad. Anyway, and he noticed his dreams were becoming exceedingly brilliant and illuminating. He was open to spending the time discerning and deciphering what they might mean. Not unlike Carl Jung, who started tracking his dreams and writing them down and making notes. And because Jung was so learned, he was able to draw from the world's mythologies and fairy tales and traditions and start seeing what he was learning from his dreams and creating his theories around dream work, especially after the break with Freud. So let's pick up. So anyway, that thought. Thoughts, comments, questions so far around that?
Yeah, I why did Unity get away from?
Oh, well, okay, so I'm also mindful of time, and I've got like 4 days worth of material. So if I seem to be scattered, that's exactly what's going on. Oh, the Intervision Department. Let's talk about the foundation of the Intervision Department. So in writing, actually, I think Tina was wrong, writing in July of 1920, Unity magazine said this: Unity has developed a few spiritually quickened souls who are able to interpret dreams and visions and other messages from the inner realm, hence the installation of this department, the Dream Interpretation Department. Although the interpretation of every dream and vision submitted to us requires the close study and clear discernment of developed workers, and he's never explained, I could find no reference as to how these workers were developed and learned these things, but I assume Fillmore himself taught them. We make no charge for this service, but like all of Unity's ministry, it shall be on a love offering basis. We shall let the Spirit within each one determine the compensation. The Lord provides for us when we do his loving service and make the matter known to his people, hence this explanation. So that's when they inaugurated the Intervision Department, and it was designed to be self-supporting. Because Charles Fillmore, though not formally educated, was a brilliant businessman. And he realized if it ain't making money, we're not doing it. It's not going to be supportive. And the theory behind the Unity work has always been free will tithes and love offerings. And that's why they put the note there. And I would like to share with you, I'll find a brief dream that was given and share with you what was determined as an interpretation. I've got so many of these here, it's like, holy Toledo Batman, where do we even start? I will find a quick one. Quickly. I've got piles of them here and they're all over the place. Or maybe I won't. So let's talk about what happened. So so that was in July of 1920. Writing in January of 1921 in an article entitled The Intervision Department, that was the heading of the magazine, about the flood and not Noah's. The Intervision Department is flooded with dreams and visions, and we shall hereafter limit our service to one dream interpretation at a time for each person. Some of our correspondents send as high as 6 dreams in a single letter. We estimate it costs us $1 for every dream we interpret. So you can see what the financial part of the work involves. So they must have done some time benefit steps, time analysis of expenditures. We make no definite charge for this work, but leave the matter of compensation to the divine justice and those who ask for our help in discerning the leading of spirit. We find, however, that people do not appreciate the instruction of spirit as fully as they do the healing, meaning the other sort of prayer work, and their free will offerings are not quite as generous as they should be. He's like shaking his finger at him, saying, y'all are trying to get something for nothing, so you need to cough it up. We want this department to be self-sustaining, and in order to do so, those who ask for interpretations of dreams should be informed of the expense involved, and that they may give as they receive. And then he goes on about the free will tithe and love offering method. So why the department didn't make it? Apparently, it wasn't breaking even. And probably somebody in accounting said it's not breaking even. And it was discontinued without really there was no formal notice that the department had been discontinued. All of a sudden, it was just gone. Some of you, Barbara or Joanne, you may remember a wonderful leader in the Unity movement, Dorothy Pearson. So Dorothy Pearson, when I talked to her, was in her 90s, and this was back when I was working on my master's thesis. And when she came to work at Unity Village as a young lady, and she worked with Charles and Myrtle Fillmore. Well, Charles Fillmore. Myrtle had passed by the time she got there. And I asked her, I said, Dorothy, do you remember the Intervision Department? And she said, no. And I said, shucks. And she goes, why are you asking? She goes, well, I'm doing a paper on dream interpretation in the Unity movement. And she said, well, I do remember that they were starting and stopping all kinds of things then. And if you look in the Unity archives, you'll see all the different projects they just started and dropped and just kind of see what would fly. There's stuff on the wall. If it's stuck, say, okay, we'll go with that. And she said she did have 2 dreams that Mr. Fillmore interpreted for me. Well, I don't think these are, I'm going to violate too much of a confidence. They're kind of simple, and she shared with me and said I could share them onward. So she went to Charles Fillmore, co-founder of the Unity movement, and she said, "Oh, Mr. Fillmore, last night I had the most beautiful dream that I was flying." And she said, and he looked at me and said, "Dorothy, can you pay your rent?" And she's like, "What?" And he explained that sometimes a dream like that is a dream of escapism, because there's a balancing function of dreams to balance our outer world and our inner world. Something gets too crazy out here. Maybe she was working really a lot. Her spirit needed a sense of freedom for balance, and so she had a dream of flying. So sometimes we have dreams like that. We're flying. It's like, if we look at our conscious situation of our lives, and this is really important, if you're going to track your dreams, you want to have 2 different columns. This is what was going on in my life today, or these are the big issues I've been dealing with lately, and this is what my dreams have been. Inevitably, there will be a correspondence, and you may not see it at first. Sometimes dreams come to balance. Maybe some part of our life has gotten unbalanced. You're working a lot. Your psyche, your soul needs to take a rest or take a flight. Just get out of it for a while. And so you might have a dream like that, as an aside. So one of the things Fillmore said and that Jung said is that when you're doing dream interpretation, it is very important for you to be able to document, or whoever you're sharing your dream with, to know what's going on in your active waking life, because that's often what the unconscious is responding to. Sometimes the unconscious or subconscious or the superconscious will be prospective and give you some pointers of things to look at. Like I said, maybe some symbols there of things you may not be aware of. So back to your dream. This is not fair for me to say this, but
Started at 5 years old, just so you know.
Okay, great. So, if I had a dream similar to that one, I would wonder, is there something going on in my colon? How's my digestive tract? It could be that that's speaking to some part of your body. One of the other rules that, I'm just kind of all over the place in the interest of time, every element of a dream is some part of yourself. So let's say you dream, you see a car in a parking lot, and the trees are green and there's columns. You are some part of all those elements. How am I the car? How am I the tree? How am I the grass in this dream? How might I reflect and see myself? What might those things be telling me about myself? So one of the items is that you are every dream element is a part of yourself.
I want to know the difference between a dream and a very deep sleep, where you can actually, I will be in a deep sleep and I can actually come up with answers to problems that I have in the business world maybe, and I'm half awake, not really a dream, but they're subconscious. And Nixon used to do this, remember he used to have a tape recorder next to his desk or his bed.
Is that the one he gave to Rosemary Woods?
Exactly.
Okay.
Most of this erased.
Clarity.
So is there a difference between a subconsciousness of a sleep where you're half awake and a dream? I think there is, but.
Well,
I want to add to that.
okay.
What about the Akashic records? We can connect to that. Am I saying that right for some reason?
Akashic.
Okay. So that could also be a connection to solving problems, because the answers are all out there. So I'm just bringing that up, that that's also something we might connect to.
Well, think about what is in the storehouse of the subconscious.
Exactly.
So, there's a teaching that there are records called the Akashic records of your life, and you can access those. In a psychological term, I would say that that's another way of saying the subconscious realm of mind, and we can connect with that. So in essence, to your point, I have 2 points to your dream. I have 2 points. One is, as long as you got something constructive out of it, doesn't matter what you call it. That's point one. And secondly, I don't know if that's, I would say that there are times when we are lucid, when we are dreaming, and we know that we're dreaming, That's another type of experience of a dream, when you're conscious that you're dreaming and yet you're consciously engaged in an experience of both wakefulness and restfulness, if that makes sense. And again,
It's like
what we're talking,
meditative.
it is very meditative, and much of one of the things that Fillmore said that an individual could do, let's say you write out your dream and you're interpreting, you may need to spend some time in silence and say, like, last night I had a dream about the school bus, and so I'm gonna, this morning or whenever I wake up, write it down and just go into silence, get still, however you do, so however you meditate, it doesn't matter. You can do walking meditation, swimming meditation, whatever, with an intention, reveal to me what this means. And you're speaking to the wisdom of yourself, or you might say, I'm speaking to God, wherever wisdom comes to, wherever it comes from to you, stay open to what that is. And don't be surprised if absolutely nothing happens. But later on during the day, you hear a song on the radio that kind of triggers a memory about the dream. It's like, oh, that's what it means. It's part of the work of dream interpretation is simply being willing and receptive to what a dream might mean. And quite often, what a dream might come to tell you is something you don't want to know consciously. Or you might not even expect that could be a frame of reference or a part of your reality. It's interesting, Jungian analysts talk a lot about prior to 9/11, how many people had dreams that described that experience. And yet there was that just doesn't make sense. They don't fly airplanes into buildings, that's stupid, who does that? And yet people were having those dreams. Jung said that he had analysans coming to him in the years prior to World War II about rivers of blood, and he had those dreams. Now, granted, if you see Hitler growing in power and listening to the rhetoric, it probably isn't too far of a stretch to think, oh, I don't think that what's coming up is going to be real pretty. But there are cases and studies from Jungian analysts about these sort of things happening on a much larger scale. We want to go next. Yes.
So if you have during your sleep time, you're given information, an answer, name of the business, whatever, you're given information, you wake up, you write that down, you go back. Is that considered a dream? Or is that just an experience of tapping into the wisdom?
That's what I'm saying, that there is a difference. You're tapping into something, all the knowledge is out there.
Well, let me
Everything is there.
So let me put it to you. So the question was the difference if you're just tapping into divine wisdom or if you're dreaming. So my answer to that, and it may sound, I don't mean to sound short, were you asleep when it happened? It's a dream. So that's how I interpret that. So, and again, the larger issue is, did you receive something of value? Now, let me give you a case study. So there is another resource you might want to look up is a man by the name of Jeremy Taylor. Jeremy Taylor was a Unitarian minister who wrote extensively about dreams. His most pivotal book, where he put everything in, is called Dreamwork. Jeremy passed a few years ago, but I had occasion to host him in a couple of my different ministries. And Jeremy talks about a process called group projective dream work. And this is something that would be very helpful to do and could easily be done with a group of trusted individuals in which the group meets, and somebody shares a dream, and whenever somebody else in the room wants to take a stab at what it might mean, they always begin with the words, if it were my dream, it would mean this. Somebody else says, if it were my dream, it would mean this. It would mean my dream. And so sometimes working in that context, it might help you to begin to think outside of your normal thought process. Because I have a saying I sometimes use, I have shared this from the pulpit, and I've never been struck by lightning. So much of our thought process as human beings is habitual, with the accent on the bitch part. you know? So just to get our attention. So we often kind of get in our lane of thinking, but if we are in a circle of trusted individuals, and they say, if it were my dream, I might see it this way, then you'll begin to open up some neural pathways to understand how other people think, and they might share their own wisdom about a particular dream. He tells a story about working with a group of clergy candidates. And one individual just said, I don't ever remember my dreams. I have nothing I ever remembered. And so he'd worked with this group for a while. And at one point, one individual said, Jeremy said, well, give me something. And the guy said, I had a dream a while back. I don't know when it was. And it was of the pastel colors. And to tell you honestly, I hate pastel colors. And Jeremy said, great, we can work with that. And the guy was incredulous. What do you mean you can work with that? And so he said, what do you, tell me about pastel colors. Well, he said, well, I hate it. And then somebody else, and then he said, well, does the word pastel sound like something else? And the group of clergy students, one of them said, yeah, pastor. And the guy said, well, what do you think when you hear the word pastor? And the student said, I don't want to be a minister. Blurted it out. He had been pressured by his family with a long line of clergy tradition to go to seminary. Didn't want to be a minister. All he had was a dream with a snippet of a pastel color. That's all it took. He found that in that group projective Dreamwork setting, that with just a little bit of questioning, he was able to access something that on some level he knew all along, but didn't want to admit. So when we are doing dream work, then we might say, well, what else might it mean? What else could this mean? That's why it's important to be familiar with symbol systems from other traditions. Numbers have symbols, letters have symbols, colors have symbols, and mean different things in different cultures. We talk about brides wear white and black is a mourning color. Well, in other cultures, those colors mean different things. And so you might have dreams. So if colors show up in a dream, what else might that mean? Or when you look at place names, I had a dream once of Hillary Clinton and something else. And I thought, why would I dream of Hillary Clinton? Well, in my mind, I compared the alternative and said, okay, now I know. So anyway, but I looked up the meaning of the name Hillary. It comes from the Greek word meaning hilarious and funny. And I realized that in my waking life, I had not been having much fun. So Hillary Clinton came to me in a dream to tell me to have more fun. So that's the sort of thing that can happen in dream work. So that's why like trying to teach how to do dream work takes it could take a long time. But if you have a name, if somebody's name shows up or a person shows up in your dream, go to a name dictionary. What might that name mean? And so interesting parallels. Charles Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, Carl Jung, founder of analytical psychology. Their names come from the root word Karl in German that means man. One of the old meanings of the term of the name man. So interesting, or having a dream about Hillary. There are all kinds of comparisons. Unity produced one guide and one guide only about dream interpretation. And it was called The Inner Vision, or Dreams and Their Interpretations. This was published in 1930, and it was reprinted again a couple times, the last version being in 1951. I'll leave these here for Unity of Chautauqua folks, if you want to share those. Since you're not a member of Unity of Chautauqua, if you're interested, you may want to take one. I'm just going to put it in your hand so you can say, I got a souvenir from going there tonight.
Can you get these on the internet?
Yeah, everything is available at truthunity.net. You can download a copy for yourselves. But interestingly, I found a note in a version of the 1951 edition, and it said, from the note, said this, from Farabee, who was a reference librarian, Inner Vision booklet was discontinued from stock because it was generally misunderstood by the public. The great misunderstanding had to do with thinking symbolically. thinking symbolically rather than literally. We like a literal world. That is our history of Greek rationalist thought. We want things to be black and white. We want things to line up in columns. The subconscious mind doesn't work that way. It works in symbols and pictures. You know, it's kind of like the phenomenon we often hear about of the misunderstood artist whose work was too big. It couldn't really be grasped by somebody who's a bean counter. What do you mean? What's that about? I don't understand. That Picasso guy. You know, but to be able to see symbolically, it becomes an art form. I have a variety of different articles and interpretations and things from Unity Magazine. I knew we had an hour. I knew it was not enough. I was cautioned, don't prepare a 2-hour workshop, let alone a master's thesis to share in an hour. But I did want to give you an understanding of part of the leading edge, what I consider thought process of the founders of the Unity movement, who understood that a healthy spirituality went hand in hand with a healthy psychology. That psychology and religion work hand in hand together. And I want to share just a couple statements from both Fillmore and Jung around this idea. All right, and I'm almost there. I thought I had it. Here it is. This is from Carl Jung's autobiography, Memory, Streams, and Reflection. The Christian world is now confronted by the principle of evil, naked injustice. Oh my goodness gracious. I apologize. That's not what I was looking for. Heck. Well, I thought I easily had my hands on what I wanted to share with you. Basically, Jung and Fillmore were both saying it is high time for the psychologist and the clergy to work together to support the care of the soul of the individual in their care. And so we in Unity have a history of doing that. Part of what I desire to do for myself and the Unity movement is to bring back the interpretive work of dreams into the Unity movement. I simply have not had time to do so since I wrote my master's thesis. So anyway, thank you for your attention. It's a lot to cover. I hope everybody will take home something of these handouts and visit the truthunity.net website. There's all kinds of articles and things I copied there. Yes.
Could I end on a high note?
Absolutely.
I want you to know I have dreams that I can fly, and they are fantastic. And I mean it sincerely. It happens somewhat regularly. And I am in a dream, and I am flying, and I am flapping, and I am above the clouds or above the ground. And it's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen, and you cannot convince me that I can't fly. I can really feel it. And I used to have a dream where there's a place right here by Lighthouse Point Grocery. I knew the guy's house, and I would fly over that house, and it happened 2 or 3 times, and I would tell Anna about it. And I can describe that house from that dream.
Oh, fantastic.
Well, that could be your astral body.
Well, I mean,
But you won't get me on a plane.
well, seriously, what's impossible for the conscious mind? I mean, reality. You think about so many, like the Benzing ring came out of a dream. So many people access important discoveries from dreams or even from visions. You know, when we talk about this, I love a line from my friend Reverend Diane Scribner-Clevenger. She talks about how we sometimes get ideas from out of the blue. Did you ever get an idea from out of the blue? She says that's just another name for God. You know, when something pops into your mind, it is very similar to what you were talking about. There's a permeability of the contents of the unconscious. It might be personal or collective or superconscious. A divine idea comes into your mind. We talk about inspiration or sudden Zen insights of awakening. All of this is normal stuff, and sometimes it happens when we are asleep, and sometimes it happens when we are awake. A vision and intuition can happen when you're awake. A dream happens when you're asleep. And so all of them provide us access to the divine, however we understand it to be. So a great work and what is important, here's a great caution, is to ensure that an individual has a strong, sound ego, so that when we get this information and inspiration, we don't lose our sense of practical reality. Sometimes we've heard the experience about people who go mad or the crazy artist or that sort of thing. And you wonder what happened to these people. Well, their ego may not have been strong enough to survive maybe a trauma, because unfortunately here on planet Earth, traumatic things happen. Or there was an explosion of contents from the subconscious, and somebody becomes catatonic or psychotic. And so it is very important for us to ensure, and this is what Fillmore was talking about as well, when we have the understanding of the mind, that we are consciously stable and have supports and ways of making meaning of the world and the events around us. Because ultimately, when you have a dream, you're the one who makes it mean something. When you have an experience in your day-to-day life, you're the one who makes it mean something. So it is important to have a spiritual foundation that will help you be strong, so that you can not only withstand the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, because I'm sure we have all had fantastic things happen and really awful things happen. And somehow we have to be able to be like a tree and sway with it all. And those are external events. And then we have the internal events, where we have to be able to process our thoughts, our feelings, and our conscious and our experiences of what's happening in our minds. And so what a premise in unity is, and why I wanted to open with the part about Christian healing and Christian psychology, and that's what came out in the work, is that these two things are intimately connected. Because you may have heard of toxic religion, or people who've been wounded by unskillful faith leaders, and we just want to make sure that never happens to anybody. And there are, fortunately for us, wonderful faith leaders in all the world's traditions doing mighty work. And for us in Unity, it has just been part and parcel of our theology to have sound psychology. Anyway, thank you all for your attention, and I can hang out as long as we still have the room. But Barbara's going to tell us at some point, we got to get out.
Yeah, by 8, we have to.
By 8.
Everybody's got to be out of the building by 8.
All right. Hi, Esther.
Yeah, there she is.
Anthony said it's Esther.
And she's smiling. Do you want to see her?
Sure.
Come see her. You can see her face.
Hey, sister. Good to see you. There's my hand.
We're going to end it. Tell her we're going to end it. So
All right,
say
we're
goodbye.
done. So we'll see you soon.
There's a lot of these, it appears.
Yeah.